It's homework time, yes! Happy homework time is here yet again. Here we go, let's jump right into lesson 5. Start out the correct and usual way by jotting our name down at the top of the paper. I will put my name and you put yours. I put the date as well. What's today? Well, it's today where I am, and you put the actual date where and when you are in this wonderful world of ours. Our instructions. Draw horizontal lines, I mean side to side like the horizon, to decompose each rectangle into the number of rows as indicated. And you see this example here. There are 3 rows we're instructed to do. Use the model to give the shaded area as both a sum of unit fractions, that would be like this, where the numerators are 1, that's what we mean by unit fractions, and, as here, as a multiplication sentence. So most of A here is done here already for you, so you can see as an example. So when we look at this, it's 1/2, right? This shaded area, when I just look at this, ignoring those dotted lines there for a minute, that this is 1 out of 2 is shaded in. But now when I take into account the partitioning into 3 rows, well, now they're 3 out of 6. So that is to tell me that, yes, 1/2 is equal to 3/6. Okay, and see how they're equal? There's no more cake here. All we did was cut the cake 2 more times to make 3 rows of cake, and same amount of cake. They're equivalent fractions. So 1/2 equals 1/6, right there, there's 1/6, plus 1/6, yeah, we did this yesterday, plus 1/6, which is a total of 3/6. And this, now here where we write as multiplication, this would be the same as if we said, that 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 3. Well, you could say, well, 3 times 1 is 3. And that's all we're doing here is saying, well, instead of writing 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6, we could just say 3 times 1/6. So you see how the 1/2 is equal to 3/1/6, which is a total of 3/6. 1/2 is 3 times 1/6, which is 3/6. Okay, let's go on and do a little bit more of this for ourselves. And in B and C, all we're given now is the tape diagram with instructions of how many rows to create. Okay, so let's start by looking at this one. We have 1 shaded in out of 1, 2, 3, 4. So quite simply, the fraction there is what? 1/4, right? All right, no problem. And now it says to create 2 rows. Now these instructions are sometimes a little confusing. When it says create 2 rows, that means we're going to draw 1 line, because that is what will create 2 rows. Sometimes I have had students draw 2 lines thinking that 2 rows means draw 2 lines. But do you see how that works there? So now we have 1, 2 rows. Okay, so now when we look at it this way, there's no more cake here. Still 1/4 of the cake, but we just cut it in half there, and so now we have 2 rows of cake. And so how many are shaded in? Yes, 2 out of 8. Yeah, and I wrote that in dashed line. Isn't that cool? I'm just going to leave it like that because it's funky fresh, y'all. All right, and then to write this as the sum of unit fractions, we'd say 1/4 is, well, what's this? Right here, just this guy. This is 1/8, and this is 1/8. Yeah, so 1/4 is an 1/8, and an 1/8, also known as 1/8 and 1/8 is, yes, 2/8. All right, you got it. And now the easy part here is to express what we just wrote in addition as multiplication. How many 1/8 are there here? There are 2. So we wrote 1/8 2 times, correct? So that would be 2 times 1/8, which, believe it or not, is still, that's right, 2/8. See how this works? No problem. Okay, so again, we're starting with 1 shaded in out of 4. So starting with 1/4, even though they made the size of it a little different, it's still 1/4. Now, though, we're to create 4 rows. And this is where, again, that make 4 rows instruction can be a little confusing. So let me grab my dashed line and remind me to change it back. All right, so to create 4 rows, we're going to have to draw 3 lines. And so we remember that when we're looking to do this, we can do one down the middle and then split each of those parts in half. Okay, so that and that. And the way to check yourself on these, because you won't have me helping you on the test or anything, right? The way to check yourself is to just simply look back and say, did I create 4 rows? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I did. Okay, I did it right. Because if you drew 4 lines, you'd say, wait a second, I have 5 rows. All right. So now let's look at it. How many are shaded in? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 4 times 4, 16. So 4 out of 16 are now shaded in. Lovely. And so that means 1/4, to write it out as the sum of unit fractions. This is a 16th, so is this, and this, and this. So it's 1/16 and 1/16 and 1/16 and yes, 1/16, which is a total of, well, we already know, right? It's 4/16. And to write that as multiplication, we'd say that 1/4 is, well, I wrote 1/16 how many times? 4 times. So 4 times I wrote 1/16, which is still equal to what? 4/16. All right. Hey, look at that. We're moving and grooving. Let's go see what treasures number 2 has in store for us. And number 2, we'll read the instructions, but we're essentially doing the same thing. They're just giving us equivalent fractions to start with instead of a tape diagram and a number of rows, which actually in a way is a little bit easier and helps you to learn this better. Believe me, this equivalent fractions can be tricky, and I actually like the way Eureka Math does it, despite all of my griping about the length of the Lesson 4 homework, which could stand to be trimmed. Tonight is much better. Despite the way this page looks. But you will have this mastered. If you do this work and dig in, you will know this for the rest of your life and you will be a happier person because of it. We're going to draw area models to show the decompositions represented by the number sentences below. For example, 1/3 equals 2/6. That's what they mean by the number sentences. Represent the decomposition as a sum of unit fractions, adding 1 something plus 1 something, right? Unit fractions, adding up sum, and a multiplication sentence. So you see, it's the same thing we were doing before, just now we have to draw the area model. So 1/3 equals 2/6. So some of these I'm going to have to draw bigger than others. This one I don't have to go crazy with, you'll see. So there we go. And I need to make this thirds. And I'm going to do as I did in lesson 4 and shade it in orange. Beautiful. All right, and now we want to show how this is 1/6. So sorry, 2/6. So let me get my dashed line out. So we can see I'm going to go from 1/3 to 2/6. I think you don't even really have to do the math so much to just see here. Okay, if I do that, and you can picture some of these in your head without even having to draw them out, you can say, okay, if I do that, I'm going to have 6 parts, 2 of which are shaded in. So as a sum of unit fractions, I'd say, hey, 1/3 is, what's this? That's 1/6, and this is 1/6. So it's 1/6 plus 1/6, which is how many 6 altogether? Yeah, you got it, 2/6, which is what we had here to start with. Good, it all matches up. And to write this now as a multiplication sentence, I'd say 1/3 is, well, how many times did I write 1/6? 2 times. 2 times 1/6, which still magically is 2/6. All right, see, so what we just did right there, that's what we're going to do for each of these, although some of them the drawing gets a little more complicated, but not horribly so mercifully on this one. So now we're starting again with 1/3, and we will show that 3/9 is an equivalent fraction. All right, so, and you know what, let me go back a second. Sorry, I should have, to make it perfect here, I should designate that this is 1/3, and underneath they like to do it this way to show that it's also 2/6. So just let me have it perfectly correct there. All right, so anyway, back to B. I'm going to partition this rectangle into thirds. All right, and now I want to get my orange, and I'd actually encourage you, if you feel like it, to use a colored pencil, a light colored pencil, to shade these in. Makes it a lot easier to see what you're doing. All right, and now I need to make some partitions. So look, I'm going to 3/9. So how many lines do I have to draw? Well, these are thirds. So here's how you can think about it mathematically. We really didn't have to on that first one because it was kind of obvious. But you say, what's the relationship between, let's look at the denominators, between 3 and 9? What's times 3? That means we're going to make 3 rows. Remember how in number 1 it would say like 2 rows or 3 rows? Now here, this is how you figure out how many rows. You say, 3 times what is 9? Times 3, so I need 3 rows. So, and now, keeping in mind that to draw 3 rows, holy Toledo, what happened there? All right. I see, it's like, hey, you want me to line it up with that? And I'm like, no thanks, dude. All right, so I have to draw 2 lines to make 3 rows. And of course, stop and check yourself. Look at it and say, okay, did I accomplish what I set out to do there? Did I make 3/9? Do I have 3 rows? Yes, so it works. All right, and now we'll do the step I almost missed on that last one. Say, hey, this is 1/3, and this is 3/9. And Eureka, if you redo this, you could give me a little more room here, folks. All right, so 1/3 is how many ninths? There's a ninth, there's a ninth, there's a ninth, right? So 1/3 is 1/9 and 1/9 and 1/9, which is a total of, you got it, 3/9. And see, the math part here is probably the easier part, right? Just getting the drawing right can be tricky, especially for me. So how many times did I write 1/9? I wrote it 1, 2, 3 times. So 3 times I wrote 1/9, which is still 3/9. And we can see how they're equal. The same amount is shaded in there. Just only thing that changed is how I cut the cake. So now we're going to start again with 1/3, and we can look ahead to D and say, hey, we're starting with 1/3 as well. But we can see here we're going to make 4 rows. You see that? Because what's the relationship between the denominator of 3 and 12? It's times 4. So after we make our 1/3 model, we'll need to make 4 rows to have 12ths. So I do need to try to make this a little bit, what happened there? A little bit bigger, maybe just a little bit. I still need room to write everything. So I have room to make the 4 rows. All right, so let me draw my 1/3 model first. And notice neither my models nor yours will be perfect. It's a model, right? Yeah, so there we go, it's a model. So scribble, scribble, scribble. There's 1/3, right? Making the 1/3 model. And now to make 4 rows here, and again, I know it's 4 rows because I look at the denominators. 3 times what is 12? 4. So I need to make 4 rows. Just as here, 3 times 3 is 9. I need to make 3 rows. Here, 3 times 2 is 6. I need to make 2 rows. All right, so now I'm going to get my line, paint it black, and make it dashed. And so now to make 4 rows, I need to draw 3 lines, and we recall how this is one of the easier ones to do because you can cut it in half and then partition each half in half. And I use these words interchangeably: split, decompose, partition. For for what we're doing here, they're synonyms. Okay, now look at what we have there. Is it what we wanted? Do we have 4/12? 4 is shaded in out of 12? Yes. And you got to do that little check. I'm not just doing it for me, although I am. So let's say this is 1/3 is what we started with. And then we decomposed it to 4/12. Ooh, that's a horrible 2. Oh, I made it worse. Okay, so anyway, 1/3 is, well, how many 12ths? 1/12, another, another, and another. So 4 of them all together, of course. 1/12 plus 1/12 plus 1/12 plus 1/12, which is how many 12ths? Yeah, we already know, but you can count them, you can add them. Yep, it's 4/12. And I bet this is getting easier now, huh? When we say, well, how do I write that as a multiplication sentence? How many times did I write 1/12? Yes, 4 times I wrote 1/12. So that, again, still is 4/12. All right, let's jump right into D, where, again, I'm going to start with 1/3, and I can see now I'm going to 15ths. Make this kind of big as I reasonably can, thinking, gosh, I still got to fit in 2 more of these. I know, we all have these problems. It's not just you. It's not your fault, kid. All right, so let's start off by modeling 1/3. And I'm going to go now and get my orange pencil to shade in that 1/3. Good. Scribble, 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 scribble. All right. And now I'm going to switch back to black, get the line. I'm going to draw a dashed line. Now, what's my factor here? How many rows do I need? Well, 3. What's this relationship between 3 and 15? 15 is 5 times 3. So I need to make 5 rows, for which I need to draw 4 lines. Remember how that works. So this is actually going to be a little tricky, but we can do it because we have mad skills. Yeah, 1. Now here's a second line. And a third line. Ooh, yeah, see, mine aren't perfect. Done my best. All right. Yeah. I hope yours are better than mine. I'd be proud and not ashamed at all. So now, did I do it correct? Always stop and check. All right, do I have 5 out of 15? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 5, 10, 15? Yes. So this, and make the bracket nice and small, so I have room to write 1/3. Tiny, tiny. And this is 5/15. All right, and so now to write this out as addition, as a sum of unit fractions, I'd say 1/3 is, well, I have a 15th, and another, and another, and another, and another. Yes, so 5 of them. Oh, this is fun. I love doing this. Yes, that was sarcasm. 1/15 plus 1/15 plus 1/15 plus 1/15 plus yawn 1/15, which is a total of what? That's right, 5/15. And then to write this as multiplication, we'd say 1/3 is, well, how many times did I write 1/15? I wrote it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, right? Because there were 5/15. So 5 times I wrote what? I wrote 1/15. All right, and so that is, of course, how many 15ths? Well, it's 5/15, just as you'd want and expect it to be. And I just decided just now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a fresh sheet of paper to do E and F, so I don't have to like all kinds of squeeze it in there. So let's go on and do 2 E and F. Roll film. Ah, that's better. A little room to stretch out here. Okay, so E and F are the same, except now we're looking at both cases. We're starting with 1/5. So it's nice having a little more room here, huh? So let me draw this hereabouts, and I can do the math up above. All right, make about that big. Okay, and now I need to divide this into fifths, okay, because I'm starting by modeling 1/5. So I need to draw 4 lines, about as evenly spaced as I can make them. And 2, 3, and 4 lines gives me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections there. Okay, and now I only need one of those shaded in. Grab my orange colored pencil here. Great, good enough. And now I need to partition this. And let's see, what's my factor? It's a factor of 2, isn't it? 5 times 2 is 10. So I only need 2 rows. Now to make 2 rows, yeah, I just draw one line down the middle there. And then always stop and double check yourself. Okay, I did it in orange, so let me undo that and switch back in black here. Yep, I got my dash line, I need black. All right. Good, good. All right. And always stop and double check yourself. Okay, did I do it right? Yes, I have 2 2/10, right? 2 out of 10 now. All right, so let's go ahead and draw that. This is, oh, I'm still dashed. Well, I tell you, if it's not one thing, it's another. This is 1/5, and this is 2/10. And they're equivalent. They're the same thing. When I say this is and this is, they're equivalent. Now I can do my math up here. I have a little space, see? So 1/5 is, well, this is what? A 10th, and this is a 10th. So 1/10 and 1/10. Which, of course, is a total of, right, 2/10. And that's exactly what we expected and wanted. And to write that same sum of unit fractions, but as multiplication now. Well, how many times did I write 1/10? I wrote it 2 times. So it'll be 2 times I wrote 1/10, which of course is 2/10. And so you don't get confused, because I have students sometimes say, well, that's 2/20, because they'll do, you know, whatever kind of multiplication. Instead of tenths, think anything else. Think tenths, like tents that, you know, like camping tents. So 2 times 1/10 would be 2/10, right? So they don't magically become something other than tenths just because you have 2 of them, right? They're still tenths. They're born tenths, they die tenths. They're tenths. All right, so now let's go ahead and draw, and now I'm going to draw up here a bit. Try to give room for my wonderful visage at the bottom there. Okay, so again, I'm starting with 1/5, all right? So like you, I probably could do a little copy and paste action, but since you can't, I'll be nice and I'll draw it out too. So from my rectangle, I want to make 4 relatively equally spaced, relatively straight lines, unlike that one. Okay, and that gives me fifths. And now grab my color pencil and color in 1/5. Goody, goody. You notice we've had all ones for numerators here, which makes it a little easier. And next lesson we'll see something different there. But I won't be a spoiler. No, I won't. Okay, now I need to partition it. What's the relationship between 5 and 15? What's the factor there? It's a factor of 3. 5 times 3 is 15. So I need 3 rows for which I need to draw 2 lines. Now, if you make the mistake of drawing 3 lines because you're doing as I say and you're checking yourself always, does my answer make sense? I've been saying that since lesson 1 of module 1. You would find that mistake and you'd say, ha ha, I found my mistake. Because we look at this and say, okay, we have 1, 2, 3 out of 1, 2, 3, 15. Okay, 1, 3 out of 15, 3/15, that's what we were trying to do. If you drew 3 lines, you would have something else, right? So this is, yes, 1/5, and it's also 3/15. All right, and now over here, I'm going to write over here a bit my addition, the sum of unit fractions, to say that 1/5, which we started with in our model, is the same as, well, this is a 15th, right? And another one, and another one. So it's 1/15 and 1/15 and 1/15. Ooh, getting dangerously close to my model there, which is a total of 3/15. Sorry, a little squishy there. All right, and so writing that as a multiplication sentence then, how many times did I write 1/15 here? 3 times. So 3 times 1/15, which is 3/15. You got it. All right. Well, whew, homework's been brutal. All right, let's. We're not done though. Let's go check out the last one. I think there's just one more, right? I hope so. And the last question is one of those explain things questions, but it's actually not as tricky as it seems. So this be quick and easy. We're done. 2 minutes here. Ready? Go. Explain why 1/12 plus 1/12 plus 1/12 plus 1/12 is the same as 1/3. If you look back up at 2C, that's where we were given 1/3 equals 4/12. And so in our area model, in my area model, what do you notice? You notice that 1/3 takes up the same space, has the same area as 4/12. Therefore, those fractions are equal. And that's exactly what we can write here. In my area model, 1/3 takes up the same area as 4/12, comma. So the fractions are equal. Believe it or not, yeah, see, I told you, 2 minutes. Like, really, that's about all the explanation you need because you're referring back to the area model in 2C where you showed that 1/3 equals 4/12. Well, whoo-wee, baby, yeah, you did it. You completed another homework time, so did I. And pat myself on the back, and you too. Pat, 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 pat. All right, so have a great time, and I'll see you again next time. It is once again homework time.